have you share?
Yeah.
Be nice.
Okay.
We've all had times when our phones have let us down. Maybe you're at the big game and you're unable to send that picture message. Maybe you're on the subway and you're unable to get that phone call through to let someone know that you're going to be late. Or in the worst case, maybe you're at home and you heard that bump in the night and you're unable to call for help. Increasingly, cell phones are even more important to people in the United States. A Pew Research article was done just last April that showed that 64% of Americans own a smartphone. Largely, they use them to look up medical conditions, do online banking, to look for jobs, look for houses. Not surprisingly, a lot of young people, 18% in fact, have said that they submitted an entire job application from their smartphone. Maybe you just use it for casual things. Maybe you use it to research the news. Maybe you're using it for social media or just sharing pictures. And almost 2/3 of Americans use their phones for navigation on a regular basis. As demand is ever increasing, probably the largest source of data usage is video. 93% of people 18 to 29 regularly use video calling, and 75% watch entire television and movies from their phone. These sorts of usage actually place very, very high demand on cellular networks. So, how do we make this all work? Well, phones work a whole lot like me talking to you right now. The cell phone tower is the listener, and the phone is talking, and sometimes the other way around. You're only able to hear whoever's talking the loudest, and that's the same way with a cell phone. The more people in a room, the louder you're going to have to talk to be heard. And as you start to talk louder, the less effective your communication gets. You can't talk as long, and you're not understood as clearly. The same goes for your cell phone. The louder it has to talk, the worse it's going to perform, and the shorter its battery life is going to be. So, what are the conditions that can cause a cell phone to talk louder in the first place? Some of them are things that we can't control. Distance, terrain, something that's going to block the signal from getting from one end to the other. The other side is interference, which is something that we can control. Source of this can be accidental, things like a broken piece of electronics, an old laptop, an old Wi-Fi router, something that's not operating as it should be. Some things are intentional. Those would be cell phone repeaters and cell phone blockers. Some are incidental, largely construction equipment. So to locate this interference and to mitigate it so that we can have better performance out of cell phone networks, you use the devices that you see in front of you. First, I'm going to talk about the antenna. This is a directional antenna that's called a Yagi antenna. It is extremely directional. It listens much like an ear and only operates in the direction that it's pointed to. Then, I also have a preamp. What this does is it operates much like a hearing aid would if you were listening to someone talking. So this is going to make the signal a little bit louder so that the signal can be heard over the noise. And lastly, you'll see I have a signal analyzer. What this thing does is it gives us a graphical representation of what we're hearing. The graph across the bottom is going to show different areas and different people talking. And then across the side, you're going to see how loud they're talking. These measurements are all done in decibels, very similar to what you'd measure noise levels in if someone was talking. You'll see on the side, different numbers indicate that it's talking louder. So right now, you'll see I actually have a phone conversation going on. My phone is over here in the corner, connected to someone else. And you can see, right on the graph, where that green dot is, that is where it is actually talking. So if you see, right now, that signal is about -60. So I'm going to go ahead, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to save that so that we can see that where that level is going forward. So. All right. And as you can see, I've created a green line that's going to save exactly where the signal is so that we can compare it shortly. So the yellow line's a live view. So now, Joe, if you'd be so kind as to turn on the interference for us. So now what you'll see, the green line was at -60 before, right? Now you'll see that the phone is talking much, much louder. The phone's actually up to a -30 at the moment, if you can see that. So what you'll also see is when I point this antenna in the direction of the interference, you'll see that it's got a little spike that's going up to -10. So what you can see here is that interference is talking very, very loud, in fact much louder than the phone, and that you'll also see that the signal of the phone has gone way up to -30. So the phone is working much harder because of that interference. So in this case what we do is we would use this antenna and point it until the signal of the interference gets the strongest, and then we know what the source is, and then we figure out how to turn it off. Uncle Joe, if you'd like to turn that off. So, in conclusion, what we've shown here is that interference makes it harder for the phone to work. As you saw, as we turned that signal generator on, the phone had to talk harder just to be able to communicate. What you'd notice if you were actually using the phone is you maybe get a drop call. Your performance, the audio quality would degrade, or your internet would get slower. Also, you'd notice the phone getting hotter. The battery life would be shorter, and again, you just have poor performance on your phone altogether. And some of these things, again, can be controlled, some of them can't be. Things in the case of, again, construction equipment, short-term loss, but again, that's not the sort of thing that you can control. Some things like a broken transmitter, like we were using in this case, can be controlled, and you'd get those shut off, but we all have to work together to make those airwaves do the most that they possibly can. Thank you for your time.